Just lag.
I'm already nervous.
Did we fuck it up before we even
I
started this
think
time?
we're I think we're good. You know what I've thought about lately is do you listen to other podcasts?
No, I don't listen to any podcasts.
That should surprise zero people by how this podcast is formatted. I listened to one the other day and I'm like, wow, that was a lot different. Podcasts are like essays now.
How so?
They have this format to it, like an essay. Like an essay, it tells you in the introduction what it's going to tell you, and then it tells you what it's going to tell you, and then it tells you what it told you. It has a very,
Right, right, right.
and I don't, and this is, there was this ethos in classic philosophy that philosophy should never be written down, it should only be discussed. Because when you, like, books on philosophy have a predetermined arc to them, which is actually antithetical to the study of philosophy itself. Like, the study of philosophy is to be discovered. And so there was thoughts amongst early philosophers that it shouldn't be written down. And that's why people gravitate to, like, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, because it was a book, albeit about philosophy, but that was never meant to be read. And I think that's why it always kind of jumps off the page as most people's, like, preeminent philosophy text, because it has a discovery element to it. And that's all of this is me comparing our podcast to Marcus Aurelius Meditations, clearly.
Ooh.
But I think, same.
Yeah, we make better
Uh,
dick jokes, I'll bet, though.
I don't know, man. He probably had some zingers. He saw a
Did
lot of
he?
them, I'm sure. I
He,
don't,
he
there's a
probably
lot of
thought them
dude.
and didn't write them down.
There was a lot of dude fucking that back then.
Yeah, we don't really get into much dude fucking on the podcast.
I love how you said much, like there's some, like
That's
not
it.
a lot.
Gay foot slave has been thrown out there a few times, and
Dude,
that's
more, any time that's run around is one time too many. That will go down in podcast lore.
yeah, that doesn't need to be thrown down ever.
But I think, like, I don't know. I enjoy I we teach, and I get this all the time. Like when I teach level one.
Yeah.
Level one has evolved purely as the byproduct of me turning on my camera and teaching that week's lecture, and then coming up with new ideas and questions and being posed new ideas and questions. So, like, I think personally, like, and I do enjoy some podcasts. I enjoy podcasts that are structured like that by people who write books, because I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen to this podcast in lieu of listening to this person's entire book. But if it's someone like I'm interested in, I want a podcast that is open ended. Like, I think the constraints of a framework of a normal podcast I find very, like I know a lot of people who have, their iPad up or whatever, and it's just question, question, question. I've been on a lot of podcasts that are like question, question, question. And that's okay for extracting information, but it's not great for storytelling. And that's what we're trying to do here at RX Radio. Just tell good stories.
Yeah, I like the more conversational tone as opposed to like this is a lecture that you're gonna listen to, right? Because I do listen to audiobooks every now and then when I'm interested in particular topics, but it's very like it's dense and you have to pay attention, and if you don't, like you miss things, and then it's like all right, I got to go back, or like you're just lost for the next 13 hours. And there are podcasts that are like that. Like, you know the guy, everyone knows the guy. But like they're very educational, very dense, but they put me to sleep. Like I can't sit there for 3 hours and just listen to like a very dense informational podcast. Like if there's someone that I'm interested in and I listen to a podcast with them on it, it's because I want to see more so how they are in conversation, the way they think, the way they react to these things. And it is like you're saying, like it loses the allure if it is just kind of question, 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 like interview style. If it's a little bit more conversational and it's a little bit more relaxed, I feel like you get a better gauge on like the mindset, the thought process of someone versus just like something that's been very rehearsed.
Yeah. Yeah. It again, I always revert back to the storytelling side of things. And I think that's where podcasts are their best. And when you see the podcasts that are perpetually at the top, and not necessarily like, there's a certain amount of aggregation or allocation of resources that start to tip superlative things to an infinite extreme. Like there's a world's best, biggest, most attended, like because like everything has a superlative outlier. So superlative is like if something is good, better, and best. Better is a superlative, best is a superlative, good, falls in that succession. So like Taylor Swift, for example, there's nothing objectively amazing about Taylor Swift. It's just there has to, at every given point in the history of music, be this artist in the female genre that slants the entire world who maybe doesn't know damn thing about music towards one artist. Like there's always that pull. There's always that draw. There always has to be someone at the top if there's something that we're measuring, right? If there's something that has people stacked up doing the same thing, but some people think that it's like, oh, she got there because she's the best. It's like, well, I don't know. Like I'm not a Swiftie by any stretch of the imagination. I just know that someone has to be there. And for whatever reason, environment or circumstance or both, she's that person. And so I don't think there's like, there's this old thing of like, you wouldn't want Michael Phelps to teach you how to swim, right? Because Michael Phelps has a certain, genetic makeup. There's certain things about Michael Phelps's physiology and anatomy and that make him that. So if you didn't have those component parts, you're probably not going to be able to learn much. But, if you learn from someone who who maybe worked their way up to a national team in a country with minimal resources that got their way to like an Olympic finals heat against Michael Phelps, that guy might actually have more to teach you. So and when I look in the podcast space, like we have our superlatives, you have like the network of people that just draw all the eyeballs because, not all the eyeballs are paying attention. But when you start to like sift through some of the podcasts that would be still, widely watched, have been around for a long time, and you start to dig into which ones do the best, it's the ones that are telling stories, like literally telling stories. Like we have a storytelling way about the way we teach the concepts, but we're still kind of down the more focused lecture vein. And we'll get into a topic today predetermined, but like some of the biggest podcasts in the world are like paranormal activity stories, serial killer stories, hardcore history with Dan Carlin, like the stories of history across time. So like, I think if you're removing the outliers at the top, what you're left with is storytelling at the end of the day. So for all the haters out there, which I'm sure that we don't have enough listeners to have haters, but there's been some comments of like, hey, why don't you just do it that way? It's like, because that's lame. And I'd much rather tell a story or a series of stories to teach some sort of concept rather than like a bulletless lecture, like you said. It's just, I don't know. I didn't pay attention in school. Did you?
No, not one bit.
And we were in the same class. I wasn't even paying attention to know whether or not you were paying attention. We were both just fucking playing pool is what we did.
Yeah, seriously.
Now, in the interest of storytelling, kind of make a transition into today's episode. If you were to wake up tomorrow and say you're 20 years old, you're into coaching, you have the exact level of knowledge you had at 20, which would be coming out of an undergraduate, King's College, PA, shout out, represent. I still remember sending emails to whatever you're at college, kings.edu email address is.
That's hilarious.
But it's today. Right? Like you wake up, you're in some like bad Disney movie, and all of a sudden you're 20-year-old Jiunta, and you're like, okay, we're not going to do the grad school thing. Online coaching world is lucrative if you can figure it out, but still want to do some in-person stuff. Like you kind of are in the shoes of where a lot of people are at right now. And your goal is, I'll leave it open-ended. I'll say your goal is to be successful. By whatever right you get to define, how do you approach the coaching industry, the business of fitness from someone who is walking into it now? Because and I'm going to preface this, and I'm going to let you wrap, because the preface is there's a market emerging, or it has emerged. Maybe it's peaked and starting to fall off in the business coaching space. I think a lot of this came out of necessity during COVID. People who weren't successful at coaching clients online, didn't have any clients, needed a way to supplement their income when the in-person stuff went belly up. And then the coaching mentorship space sort of came on. And what you were left with was people teaching a method or a process or a system that had been established and had worked maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago in a new age, like a new era, new tools, new tricks, new, everything about this industry, the turnover rate of what like quote unquote works to some degree. It's fairly in flux. So where would you start? Walk me through like, okay, I wake up today, I understand, 20-year-old Jiunta in 2024. We're trying to figure out this coaching thing. Like what are some things that come to mind for you to be successful?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I'm gonna try and stick within the confounds that you set to answer this because like just wiping out the last 14 years of lessons that I've learned puts me in an incredibly different place. Like, oh, man. So, 20-year-old Junta, what he was doing, probably finishing up a wrestling season. Actually, this time of year, starting a wrestling season at King's College. I had just started personal training, I think, at the age of 19. And it was more like a supplemental thing. I was training some people out of my college gym. Um, I had been training myself as long as I can remember for probably close to a decade at that time. Um, in a more structured setting about I think I started at like a commercial gym around 12 years old. So I had about 8 years of training myself experience with that. I had been through a handful of injuries that I've kind of figured out and worked through. I was very active in seeking out information around training, which at that time it was all through like magazines and like literature. Also like conversations with people at the gym and learning from trainers at the gym. But then to superimpose that in the landscape today, it would be very, very different because the thing that Instagram has done is it has made everyone in the world accessible to you. And accessible not only in the way that you can follow them and you can like see what they're doing on a more personal level, but in the fitness industry, you can send a message. You can fucking pick up your phone and you can FaceTime call anyone on Instagram right now. Like, don't do it to me because probably gonna block your ass. But but you can do that with like literally anyone, and there is a non-zero possibility they'll pick up the phone and talk to you, right? And especially if you approach that in a more palatable way than just calling someone out of the blue. But the approach that I would take if I had woken up, I'm 20 years old today. I'm about to graduate undergrad, and I've made the decision to go into training as a profession. Um, with a little bit of training experience, a year of training experience. So I'm pretty green in the industry. I didn't have many clients when I was through school. It was more like I was charging $35 a session at the point, which is hilarious. Um, I think the way that I would go about it, I would attack it from a couple different angles. And it's hard to completely wipe my memory of the perspective that I have right now. But I would start out first and foremost at a gym that would force me to get my own clientele. So probably as a contractor at a private facility. And the reason I would do that is because you're building your clientele in that situation versus getting fed people from like a box gym or something like that. That there's a sales associate that sells them on personal training and they just pass them off to you. Um, and the reason I like that is because it's start to finish, you're the one curating that process. And you're going to learn really quick in that scenario. And the thing that you're going to learn is you're going to learn to be confident in the things that you can deliver on, be honest with people, and then there has to be follow through if you want client retention, right? You can't just make all these crazy promises and then not deliver on them, or you're going to lose that client relatively quickly. So that's the number one thing that I would do is I would enter into the in-person training space in a way where the clientele that I bring in, it's completely my responsibility. I have to go find these clients, and I have to do that in a way that is going to allow me to continue to build that. So you can't build a clientele without retention. Along with that, I think right now it's really important in the training industry. If you want to scale your income, you have to be doing something online. It doesn't mean that's where you have to start, and I don't think a lot of people should start online. I think you should start in person, because the things that you're going to learn coaching in person are the things that are going to make you a more effective online coach or online trainer. Because there's certain things that frustrations you're going to run into training people online that are going to decrease your retention if you don't understand what you need to be looking for. And it's the communication that takes place within a session, and it's the metrics you're looking for in terms of decision making around exercise selection, progression, regression, even what that exercise looks like for that day for that client. So there's a lot of planning that goes into, and there's a lot of kind of verbal and nonverbal communication that you'll pick up on training people in person that you can then take online, because you're not going to have as much feedback training someone online. You're going to have to actively seek out the metrics that you're going to monitor from that person. You have to say, I want a video from this angle of these three exercises. You're going to have to say, like, I want to know what your macros are, how much you're sleeping, your water intake. You're going to have to understand the variables that are important to their performance before you can really have a clientele and start to tailor your product towards a specific demographic. So that's why I think training in person is so important for people that are looking to go online. But it's almost like the apprenticeship that you have to go through, right? Like any trade school, there's going to be this apprenticeship, and you're going to have to kind of work under someone. You're going to have to understand what the job entails, and you're going to have to build your skills in that time before you're allowed the responsibility to take over that trade and be independent in that. And I actually like that analogy, because the other thing that I would do alongside of getting that job where you have to build your own clientele is I would work with a coach that you respect and that does things in a way that you want to mimic. And I would seek out someone that does not just kind of, the the superlative coach in that industry, because it's probably at that scale it's going to be very cookie cutter. It's not going to be very personal. So I would do a little bit of digging, I would do a little bit of research, and this is really easy to do because of the internet, through YouTube, through Instagram. um, I would find someone that you want to mimic the style of training that you do after that person, and maybe even the business model that they have. But I would want that to be something that's on a more personal basis, where, at the very least, you're exchanging communication with that person, like over message, over emails, but probably someone that you can get on calls with and that you can almost use as a mentor in that space. And there's a lot of coaches that will do this or offer this at some level. And even if they don't, you can proposition them. Like this is something that I have a few clients that I do this with, but it's not a service that I offer. It's someone that I think that they can benefit from my knowledge, and I want to see them succeed in ways that I failed at before I succeeded in them. So I would seek out someone that is seemingly in that position in the industry, or in kind of the corner or the niche of the industry that I want to go into, and I would try and form a personal relationship with them. And that's kind of what I'm talking about Instagram being an asset, is that you can reach out to these people, you can like have conversations with them, and you can turn it into a very personal type relationship where you are kind of going through that apprenticeship, and you're the apprentice and they're the whatever the person is. What do you know the term for that?
I mean, I think if I would go mentor and mentee. I know that
Right.
language.
Yeah, that sounds it's a little gimmicky, because
Yeah.
and that's, I guess, a good distinction too, is that I wouldn't go through a structured mentorship, right? It's all sales. It's all sales. And there is, depending on how you want to define success in this industry, there are mentors that you can go through that will teach you how to build a coaching system that is exactly that. It's a system to make money. And that doesn't necessarily align with my values in how I coach people, how I train people, the way that I want to go about things. It's not just about making money. It's not just about, making 100K a month following this system that's been proven. It's it's about that connection with a person and actually doing well and making changes and doing the job the way I think it should be done. So that's it's going to be less lucrative than chasing money, but you can make really good money doing it if you do it well and you're genuine in the way that you're doing it. So seeking out that mentorship, but doing it with someone that you respect the way that they're doing business and the amount of knowledge that they've acquired, and I would learn from them directly because right now there's so much information available online, and that's kind of a parallel to this is you're going to get that kind of that application, that tactical feedback of working in person with people. You're going to get that expedited learning by working with a mentor, someone that you respect, and you can learn and maybe even ask questions and have conversations with them about maybe the nuts and bolts of training or the nuts and bolts of business or things like that. But then I would also seek out not necessarily formal education, but I would seek out education that would make you an asset in that niche or in that industry that you're going into, right? If you want, that's where you want to be the superlative. You want to be the best guy in the area at the thing that you do. So that's exactly what I would seek out, whether it's sports performance, whether it's Olympic weightlifting, whether it's gen pop training, whether it's weight loss, what it can be, whatever niche you want to get into, and some of those will be more or less lucrative, but the way I look at it is the deeper you go, then the better attention you're going to have because the more specialized it is. The more shallow you stay, the greater turnover that you're going to have in that clientele. So it's kind of this constant game of acquisition and replacing clients that are falling off. Like weight loss clients, that's going to be a much bigger industry than sport performance or Olympic weightlifting. But at the same time, it's a bigger pool of people, but they're probably less motivated as opposed to some of the stuff that we get into, like people are trying to go to the NFL combine and get a contract in the NFL. That's going to be a very very convicted athlete. That's going to be someone that really has meaningful goals and they're going to buy into the process for those goals. So I would differentiate into the area that I want to be in, and then I would get as much education in that. Even if it is weight loss, know everything about nutrition. Be able to answer every single question that someone has and be able to do it to a greater degree than they want you to. Like have them tell you to shut up to the point where it's like, no, I just wanted to know if I should drink the Diet Coke or not. So that's I think a big part of this, and that's going to be the thing, along with building systems from that mentorship. That should be kind of the crux of that. Understanding where you're going to get hung up and making sure that you don't do that or you do that as little as possible. Understanding the actual interaction of coaching through the in-person coaching, and then learning as much as you can through seeking out education in that area. And that area could be business. That was kind of a thing that I think you and I we sought out later on was, all right, we're going to start a business because we're really good at the thing that we do. But then we understood really quickly, hey, we don't have any idea how to run a business. So it started to turn into like, all right, this education piece, it's no longer about being a subject matter expert in this realm. It's more about how can I get this message out to the people that need it. And that was kind of the business piece and putting systems in place. And I would do all those things. I would continue to do that. And then I would try and shift my in-person presence to an online presence, which would be, I think, is imperative right now in the landscape of the industry, and that could be social media, whether that's YouTube videos, whether that's putting out Instagram content, whether that's client testimonials. Like, build yourself some sort of presence, and it doesn't have to be a huge following. You don't have to have a huge following to be a successful online trainer or a successful trainer. But that's going to be, and we talked about this in the past, like that's going to be your resume or your CV towards people that might be interested in coaching with you, is they can go to your profile and they can see the message that you're putting out there and see if that aligns with their goals. And that's going to be something that over time is going to become more and more valuable. So if you're doing all these things, you're building an online presence for yourself. Then the next step, in my mind, is starting to put the systems in place so you can start to shift towards an online business model where you're either looking to get clients from your online presence, or to make your time more valuable, you're looking into taking clients that you have in person and shifting them to online to free up your time so that you can either bring on more in-person clients. So now you have retained that client that you had in person online, and you bring in a new client that you can take through that system, or you get to a point where it no longer is advantageous in a return on time aspect for you to work in person, and you're building your online roster of clients even more so. I think in like a very general way, those are the steps that I would take, and that's where I would kind of divert my attention in each of these areas to start to grow a business and kind of have some steps where you could be very successful in the training industry right now.
I like the overall arc. So the bones of that I think are irrefutable as far as like, don't go right into online right away. I think like you really limit how much you can scale because there's so much about this world that's intangible online that you need to get the reps in. I think I would add, I don't know. I think I would add a few things, and
So
and maybe not even add. Go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say then let's go from the beginning for you. 20-year-old shallow. I know, man. I
Oh, you
know.
knew him. You met him. That's probably when we would have first met. It would have been just that. 20
Yeah,
years old. Yeah,
yeah, that would have
probably
been
soon
it.
after.
Training over at Gold's on Dwayne.
Oh, yeah. I mean, take out all the X's and O's. If I'm to do it all today, I think the in-person social media arc is that's kind of a must. Like, there's still a proving ground. Like, there's a couple things, and look, you have to look at the upsides, and I think this is where young coaches don't lean into this, and this is where me as someone who's approaching his mid-30s actually needs to pay attention. So what I mean is risk.
Mm.
What people don't realize when they're getting into this industry and they're going online and they're seeing established coaches doing well is it's really hard to see what someone established in the industry doesn't have. It's very easy to see what they have and to look at that, but it's really hard to look between the lines of someone who is well established and to figure out what it is that person doesn't have that you actually do. And you're like, what do you mean? I have nothing. I'm 20 years old. I have a fucking undergrad degree that's probably not worth the paper it's printed on. It's like you have there's a social acceptability to take risks when you're in your early 20s that declines, that acceptability declines precipitously as you get into your mid late 20s and then into your 30s and so on and so forth. So there's a luxury that comes with the inexperience. And I think one of the things that often trips people up out of the gate is this sort of comparison thief of joy situation. But it's not even the thief of joy. It's really more, it just muddies the water of the number one asset in your arsenal right now. As a 20-year-old kid, it's like you need to be taking as many risks as your personality can tolerate, and you need to then go to work on your personality to tolerate taking more risk. And I'm not talking about like you fucking free base jumping or whatever, or rock climbing. I'm talking about like what are measured and calculated risks you can take with your, like, for me honestly, and I don't know if I would recommend this, we kind of framed it differently, but when I look back at 20-year-old me that went to grad school, part of my decision making tree was that to me seemed like the riskiest thing to do. The riskiest thing for me to do was to take a fucking quarter schmil from a bank with no real no real track record of type of person that would be able to pay this back. Like I had no other than parents that like fought tooth and nail to own their own home. There was nothing on paper where someone would be like, this guy, we're gonna
Yeah.
bet it on him. We're gonna. God bless my parents for having the balls to take that risk in their mid 50s at the time or whatever it was. But I think that, and I think that's a principle I would impart over the arc that you laid out is like, look, man, at 25, I was married pretty young, and I still was wanting to take risks, right? And because I dug myself in with school, I dug myself in, and you know what? That was a risk that I took in coming out of school. I was behind the eight ball, like socially, in a sense that I was 25 and I was starting at square one where most people might come out of an undergrad. And it's not like we came out with a PhD from Caltech in fucking astrophysics and like we were guaranteed a job. It's like, okay, now you're at less than ground zero. And that can really like, and you have to understand that you get to choose. And this is where like, on a slightly deeper level, like if you choose a risk, know the consequences. And then when you're eating shit on the other side of those consequences, know why you took that risk to begin with. And it's like, dude, the number of fucking coaches that just sit on the ledge. You know what I think about a lot? Do you know have you seen the new Top Gun movie? The one with Miles Teller?
Yeah.
So such a good for America movie, right? Like it's just like America defeats the bad guy. It's like so many feel good storylines, but there's a scene like the son, right? The kid whose dad passed away, Iceman's kid. I think it was Miles Teller who played. It was Miles Teller played the actor, and that was like opposite Tom Cruise, and he's kind of known for like being a little bitch. Like he's kind of known for like I think the term they use is like sitting on the perch. Like, he in the final sort of scene, he just doesn't fly fast enough. The number of kids that I see that just sit on the perch, and it's like, what are you waiting for? To wake up at 40 and then decide, dude, it's way harder to fucking hit warp speed when you're like, so the number one thing that I think I would tell 20-year-old me, and I feel as if I told 20-year-old me this and I took a certain path based off of that. And it's something that I tell 34-year-old me every day. But it's something that when people come to me, because in a similar fashion, like I'll do mentoring for like, there's 2 or 3 people that I get on calls with that I don't charge money to, and I don't offer it as a service. I was literally on a phone with he's a friend because he's established a personal relationship, like all the things you said. And I thought that was really cool because you and I don't really discuss this part of it. Like, other than maybe one guy that I think that's the first time I've really ever heard you talk about it. And we talk 10 times a day, but it's like, I don't want to see someone make mistakes that I've made or maybe capitalize on things that he's going to head a different direction, but I think my experience in being successful in certain avenues could be helpful to him. And I remember, like I was talking to a kid. He's a Cairo grad, just recent. He's out now a couple months, and like this was literally the conversation I was having with him. It's like, dude, get into you get in a relationship, you get a place. The amount of responsibility the amount of responsibility you start to take on is going to only dampen the amount of risk you can take. Because the things that you are responsible for now are liable to the decisions you make. That's why I have a duffel bag.
You embody it, man.
Right? Look, and I'm not saying it's for everyone, but I'm saying the lesson is that at least I chose. Right? And everyone gets to choose. And there's nothing worse than falling victim to your indecision. And I think one of the things that people need to understand when you're starting an endeavor and you're young and you're comparing to people who are far along, like people will be like, should I get on TikTok? Should I do this? And I'm like, what is this conversation we're having? This is not the conversation we're having, right? Like like get out there, man. Like what is a risk for you? And like continually pushing the boundaries of what is risky, because you will start to accrue responsibility quickly. Now, look, this is where I think it's useful to have, this conversation internally before you really kind of get into the business stuff, because your ethos around this will largely, garner the borders of your business, right? Like, so that's I think thing number one. If I'm like to sit down almost like a ghost of Christmas past and sit down with a 20-year-old me or an avatar similar to, I think the initial conversation is about what is your appetite for risk, right? Because with risk can come reward, and then with responsibility comes an increase a number of things that you can lose. So people are more risk averse when they have more responsibility. It's like, well, when you're young, you have very minimal responsibility. So use that to your advantage. So that's like, I think that's principle number one. And look, I see a lot of people who temperamentally are averse to risk, but they try and convince themselves that they're not. Like, this has to be a very authentic conversation. This has to be like, talk to your shrink or start a podcast with your best friend and figure your shit out, because it's like you're going to have to be, because if you're not, it'll pull the truth out of you for sure, right? And you need to understand, and it's very common with the conversations that I have, that people are always looking at what they don't have. Well, I don't have this, and it's like, you have time. That's like another thing. That's my next point, is like, you have time and energy. You can create power. If you have time and energy, you can create power. That's how, like, it's like social power you can create out of thin air with time and energy. Like, you don't need money. You're young. No one expects you to have it anyways. No one gives a fuck. Everyone knows you're poor. Don't try and flex. Don't try and ball. Use your time and money. And this is where, you talked about and something I wrote a note down that I thought, again, the bones of that arc I think are solid, of like, cut your teeth in person, getting the sales experience, getting your reps in, getting a lot of no's, right? Getting a lot of like, no, I'm not going to pay that much. No, like getting a lot of objections and learning how to overcome them, learning how to screen them, learning how to be resilient to them, learning how to move quickly to the next no as fast as possible. I think so the one thing that I wanted to highlight in this arc that you put together of like in person, make your sales, gain your clientele, take that next step into the digital world, is the transition process from where you're at to where you want to be, whether it's like you're just starting out and you want to get this client roster, or you're just trying to get into the online space and you're trying to build a digital roster. Your number one asset to accelerate that transition process of like, I have no clients, I want to get clients in person. I have no online clients, I want to get clients digital, is those two things. It's your time and your energy, right? Yeah. So what I think is like, I've banged on about this before and I'll do it again, is working for free. Proof of concept, right? Yeah. This is how the world gets sold on anything. Like, so you don't have clients. Okay. You don't have clients because you don't have clients, and you reek of desperation, and you're just this young person that barely knows their ear hole from their asshole. If you can afford to train someone for free, like, and still like not starve to death, then you should do that. Right? Because then you learn, like, it's like, I can't tell you, we talked about this the other day. I forget, maybe it was on a podcast, about like the importance of treating what you do as a practice. It's something that trainers aren't taught, but it's something that we get taught as clinicians. And one of the most powerful things that was ever said to me, and I forget who said it, but it really landed. It was in grad school, and someone was like, look, you want to practice the way you want to practice. And my dumb 22-year-old brain heard, do whatever the fuck you want. Like, that's what I heard. But someone was like, oh, you just practice the way you want to practice. Like, yeah, I plan on it. Like, I plan on doing whatever the fuck I want when I practice. But what they meant was like Allen Iverson type shit. Like, no. Like, you actually need to like drill, like practice the craft of being in clinical practice. And it was years later where I'm like, oh, that's what he meant. That's what he meant. You actually had to go in every day. And like, if we're around, when you're around pro athletes, you see the mentality of like what, like no one, not many, and only the great coaches do, but no one thinks about like, and look, a lot of people post about being hashtag 1% better or on some Goggins bullshit or on some 75-day hard. You know who's not ever better in 75 days? Fucking people that do 75 days hard. Like, I'm sorry. Like, if you needed to stay disciplined, then you're not someone that I'm ever paying money to fucking follow through on something. That if you need some guy who yells at you on a YouTube video to get your ass out of bed, to fucking get your shit done, like to do your fucking job, kick rocks. Kick rocks, and you'll be doing 75 days hard on repeat until the day you die, right? It's just like that's not the mentality of a self-starter, because by definition you're not self-starting, right? You're subscribing to this program, right? Where's the reward on that risk? You're not taking a risk. You just start over. That's bullshit, right? So to double back to my original point is, get your reps in, but understand that what you do as a coach is practice, right? So you know why you don't have clients as a new trainer? Because you suck. Like, you suck a veiny one. Like, you're just not good at your job. You don't know how, you don't know when to talk.
Quote.
You do, yeah, meditations.
Yeah.
The dick. It's like, you don't know when to talk. You don't know when to shut the fuck up. You don't know how to, linger in silence without it being awkward. And that's just, we haven't even talked about reps and sets yet. Yeah. Like, you don't know how to do your job, because of course not. But you know what you get a pass for? For being young. You know what you don't get a pass for? Sucking at your job when you're fucking 40, right? So like, practice the way you want to practice, right? Think about communication. Like, and I'm still to this day, like, remembering names.
Yeah.
People that your clients work with, their dogs' names, their kids' birthdays. Like, I have JP Landry, which is one of my first clients. I still get calendar notifications for like his birthday and his wife's birthday. I trained this motherfucker like 20 years ago. But it's like, I knew then that I was like, hey, I fucking JP didn't show up that day, and I booked him on a birthday and I didn't even know his birthday. He wrote it on an intake form and I never paid attention to it. So it's like, okay, every year after that, when it was JP's birthday, I was like, yo, let's get you the morning of, go do what you're going to do, and then we'll reconvene next week. Happy birthday. And bring him a little something, whatever the fuck. And it's like, yeah, that's why that guy fucked with me for so long. So that's like thing number one. And this is where people get it fucked up. And I fucking just hate everyone. Is they don't, when they work for free, they bring zero value. Then go die. Like, what are you doing? Working for free is when you gotta fucking bring it. Not to say you ever let the foot off the gas, but even now, and especially now, like if I'm working for free, those are my A-list hours. Like, if I'm working for free, though, and usually now when I'm working for free with someone, it's like, I need to prove concept to someone who's been in major league sports for X number of years, right? So it's like, I need to make this session. And I think what makes me better now, and it's not that I'm taking my foot off the gas. My entire session gets better after a session where I've worked for free, where I watch people just dog it. They phone it in. They show up like right on time. Their client walks in the door with them. It's like, what? Are you joking me? If you're 15 minutes early, you're late. Like, if you're in a position where you really want to break through to the next level of your career and you have someone who's agreed to give you an hour of their time, you need to treat it like that hour of their time is worth an hour of your time. And you need to fucking get in there, set up the station, have the warm up ready, water, towel, the whole 9 yards. Like, fuck. But then, so the number of times I've had to dial this speech back, bring it back to the drawing board and retool it, because I thought saying that, hey, you should work for free was an all-encompassing statement that would get a result that would accelerate this person forward. And then I see people work for free and I go, oh, fuck, I actually need to emphasize one thing. And I didn't realize that I had to say that. I need to emphasize the word work. Fucking work. It's not, I didn't say go in there and fucking twiddle your thumbs in the same room next to this person for an hour. I said fucking work for free. Put your fucking ass to work. Trainers, I love the autonomy of being a trainer. It's my favorite thing. That's, you know what? Like I'm my own boss. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're just an employee in a company with no boss. You're not your own boss. Because you know what your boss would say? Get your fucking ass to work, you lazy piece of shit. Like, that's what a good boss would say to most trainers. It's like, everyone fucking sits back, goes, yeah, I'm my own boss. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're not. You're not. Because if you were, you'd fucking look at that hour and be like, this is fucking work time. This is, I'm going to put together a product. This service is a product. It's going to be product first. I'm going to make this thing a fucking experience. And you know how you get to train people at that next tier? Is you treat the people in the tier you're currently training like they're that next tier, right? Like Ed Cohn, luckily for me, it's kind of a happenstance of where I started my competitive powerlifting career. He always used to say, like, he can't remember him coming up to me at my second meet. And he's like, you need to move your warm-ups like they're 700 pounds and you'll squat 700 pounds. And like empty bar. He's like, you got to move it like it's 700. And it's like, so I'm jumping out the coop, as Killian would say, with an empty bar, 135, 225, 315, 405, 495, 585. And it's like, yeah, that's how you do it. So if it's, you can't wait to get to 700 to move 700 like it's 700. You got to fucking move 595 like it's 700, right? You got to move 650 like it's 700. It's the same fucking thing. Like I fundamentally think, you know, risk, sure. But one of the questions you have to ask yourself is like, do you actually like to work? Some of the best coaches I know in this industry come out of the military.
Yeah.
They know how to follow orders and they know how to fucking work. You know why? Because they get to go to a place that's air conditioned and no one's trying to kill them. I have to do what? Fuck, Jerome Shear.
Oh, yeah.
That dude works like an, you know why? Because he's not in fucking Fallujah. You know how easy it is to go to work when you're not in Fallujah? Because he had to go to work in Fallujah. So I'm trying to take this because I do really like your arc of get into coaching, get in person, get your reps. You know, and here's the next transition. And obviously work is a big emphasis of this. But you should set your mile marker. And this is something that I've used as like a gauge of how well someone's service is. Your goal should be that you do such a good job coaching your clients that the transition for them online is a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. They save money. In some, like they're going to save money because you're not going to charge them this, like what they might pay for 3 or 4 sessions in person. That will be more than enough to cover. You've taught them so well how to exercise. You taught them how to think critically, right? And that comes from, well, those hours that you accumulate, you earn that time. You earn that lifestyle, right? And the way you earn it, especially if you're going this route, and obviously, you know, you're building the systems, you might acquire clients through other means, but your first online clients should be in-person clients you transition online. And the way you transition them online is you teach them. You teach them how to fucking train. You teach them the life skills that come with resistance training. And I'm not like life skills like fall down 7 times, stand up 8. It's like, no, like you actually teach them movement quality. You teach them when to auto-regulate a program, what to regress to. Like, you know, it's a really a maturation process that you're overseeing. And then once they've matured out of your in-person service, a transition into a digital, they get better results. They have more autonomy over their schedule, and you get an early stage proof of concept to help work out your system so you can start sorting this stuff out at scale. 15-minute call once a week. It takes you maybe that whole 15 minutes to update their program. The client that was taking 4 to 5 hours out of your week, maybe a little bit extra on admin, let's call it 5 to 6 hours, is now down to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Great. You just fucking open up a new dimension of your life. Now, so that's another thing that I wanted to focus on was the transitions. Like people need to know when they're sitting on the perch They're idling a little bit too slow, and they need to know when to fucking, trust their work they put in and drop the hammer. Don't think, just do, I believe is the quote from Top Gun. And I think there's a lot of merit to that. And you know what? I'm very, and I don't want to say I'm critical, and I want to get your opinion on this. The imposter syndrome self-proclamation is something that I will prod at. That's an open wound to me. When someone comes to me like, how do you not suffer with imposter syndrome? I go, because I've just done so much shit. I know. I mean, I'm not concerned about that. So, and look, this is, and I want to clarify. I know great coaches who've done the work who still have imposter syndrome, and that's something that they need to work out. But the majority of people who I talk to, and I will deliberately poke and prod on this, the reason that they have imposter syndrome is they have not done the work.
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely agree with that. And I think you even stated in that kind of rant that you went on is the the way. Well, you did state it, but I want to bring attention to this is the way that you avoid imposter syndrome is by working for free. If you feel like you're not the person to do the job, then put yourself in the position to do the job with no sort of expectation, right? If someone's not paying you for the service, then there can't be this expectation of, oh, I paid him to do this and he didn't deliver on it. But it definitely comes from not having the reps or taking on a responsibility that's above your pay grade. Maybe something that you're not confident that you can get the results that you're saying you can deliver to someone. So the way around that is put yourself in a position to deliver those results. And once you can prove to yourself that you're not an imposter, you can deliver those results, then charge someone to do it. And the more you charge someone to do it, the more confidence you'll have in that situation. But I largely think that imposter syndrome is from taking on responsibilities that you're not confident you can fulfill. So there's plenty of people I've seen them, especially in the fitness space, that have blind confidence that will never have imposter syndrome when maybe they should. But the people that I see that do have imposter syndrome, a lot of times it's people that do what they do really well, and they care a lot about the product or the service that they're delivering, and they're not confident that they can deliver a service or a product or a result to the level that they deem to be acceptable. So the way around that is prove to yourself first that you can deliver to the level that you deem to be acceptable, and then once you can deliver on that, then start to charge for it. I think that the transactional nature of this business is something that a lot of people get caught up on. There's a lot of trainers that are really good fucking trainers out there that are undervaluing their time and their service because they feel that they don't deserve to charge $200 an hour, or they don't feel the service that they're worth or that they're delivering is worth a certain amount when they're doing it better than the people that are charging $200 an hour. And that's where it kind of comes back to that statement that I made earlier on, is that you can get pretty good, you can make a lot of money in the training industry if you just sell 6-month contracts. And then every 6 months you have to re-up and either resell that contract or find someone else to fill that spot. You can probably make money, but a lot of that is you're in a sales role. You're not in a training role. And you're not building those qualities that are going to turn into client retention or transitioning in-person clients to online clients. They're only going to do that if they trust you, if they like you, and you're delivering on the service that they're paying you to do. So that's kind of where I see this coming from, is that like you can be the person that you're just making sales. And if you look at it that way, you'll probably make a decent amount of money. But if you look at it, and this is kind of another point that you made, is that, yeah, you're not your own fucking boss. You know who your boss is? The person that hired you to do your job.
Right.
And that's why, like, I've never had long-term contracts, and no shade to people that do, because I know Macintosh does that, and like
Crushes it.
yeah, highest tier service that you can get. But I've never done anything more than a month-to-month contract with anyone for anything. And a lot of the people that I'll work with in like training scenarios or rehab session, it's like, yeah, we'll go session to session. I don't give a fuck because I know I can get you results. Like I have the confidence that I can get you to stay for 6 months because I'm a good enough trainer to do that. And that's why I look at, like, you also made a point about being timely. I've been late for 2 sessions my entire training career. 2. and I gave both those sessions to those people for free because I hold myself to a higher standard than that. And if I don't uphold the standard that I deem to be acceptable, I'm not going to charge you for the service. Or like and maybe it is a little bit of a fallacy, but I feel like I didn't earn that. Like I didn't uphold a standard that I set for myself, so I don't deserve to get rewarded in the way that I feel I should be rewarded if I had upheld that standard. And that's just like a personal value for me. But 2 times in over 2 decades of training, like it's once a decade. That's not a bad average right there. But the thing is, like, these clients keep coming back. Like I've never had someone. The online clients I haven't fucking taken online clients in years, and I still have a handful of online clients. Like it's something that if you focus on every single session, every single interaction, every single transition point in a person's training career with you as an interview, and you want to get that job, you'll continually get it. And maybe not at first. That's a skill that you're going to have to hone in, but I look at every single session as this is an interview so that they hire me again. And that's something that's one of my values around training is like I don't want this person to stay with me because they signed a piece of paper that said they would. I want them to be here because they want to be here, or else I'm not going to want to be here. If you don't want to be here, I won't fucking be here. Like I have better shit to do with my time. So that's just kind of my values around training. I don't know what the fuck that has to do with imposter syndrome, but I took a little bit of a tangent there. But taking it back to your original question, like put yourself in a position where you have to get the results that you're saying you're going to deliver on. And once you prove to yourself that you can get those results, listen to yourself. Listen to the results. Make it objective. Like imposter syndrome, that's a thought, that's a feeling, that's subjective. Fuck your feelings. Like get the results and look at the objectivity around it, and that's what's going to be what helps you get over imposter syndrome.
It's funny. I've noticed myself doing this, and I'm it's a habit that I'm very glad I got into, and I curse myself often for getting into this habit. But I think we're both to a certain extent people pleasers. I think that comes with the nature of getting into this business. Like, you don't get into forensic accounting to be a people pleaser, right? Like you don't get into like serving parking tickets to be a people pleaser. Like there's some jobs that are just, that just are not suited for that temperament. But something that I put something up the other day, was to the extent of like, say yes and figure it out. And I wouldn't say I'm getting better at saying no. I'm getting better at being around opportunities that I continue to want to say yes to, right? Like I think, there's a principle to it that I see people impart, like the me in the present is, and I'll explain the language here shortly, but like the me in the present always kind of fucks the me in the future. But you haven't and that's true. Like when I was 17, the me in the present on a Saturday night was ready to fuck me tomorrow morning, but I had to get up and go work at the gym and then go work at the nightclub the next day, and I'm out, it's like 4 a.m. I'm like, fuck, like the present me is really like, fuck. I do the same thing now, but the present me is like, yeah, sure, you know what, let's get on a call and talk about that. Or the present me is sure, yeah, I can fly over, no problem, I'll be there next week. Like, and then when I'm sitting on a plane going, fuck, how did I get here for the 60th time this year? I said no more planes. And then the present me in the moment when given an opportunity goes, yeah, for sure. Yep, absolutely. Let's do it. And then, again, there's a key there. You mentioned values. You have to follow through.
Yeah.
Following through, and this is going to tangent a little bit. But again, there's something I talked about earlier that I want to revisit, because this is a crash course conversation about early stage business development and trajectory for someone in the fitness industry. And I want people to hear the deafening sound of what we're not saying. I haven't talked about posting frequency. I haven't talked about TikTok versus YouTube versus Instagram. I haven't talked about lead magnets, acquisitions, or funnels. I haven't talked about recurring revenue. And all I've talked about is the things that matter, right? Like there's higher level personal traits that you need to develop to move to the next level. Like, because whatever the system is, it's only as good as the operator, right? Like they work in tandem as a business. Like the operator has to have a certain level of skills. Otherwise, the AI is just going to take your job, right? And as AI spits out some of the dumbest workout programs I've ever seen and doesn't know how to discern good from great, I just become more valuable, right? So I want people to hear the deafening noise of what we're not saying as we move through the stuff we're actually saying, right? So the point of that little offshoot was like, okay, kind of say yes and figure it out, but you have to stick to your guns. Like you have to follow through. And then with following through, there's an arm of following through that is following up. Holy shit, the amount of money I've made in my life, the amount of connections, the amount of friendships, the amount of opportunities that I've had. And I'm on the other side of this to a certain degree, where people who look, we're busy. We're busy people, you and I. We have a lot of shit going on. And sometimes I need a nudge. I try and build systems around me so I don't forget. We have people around that are, we have a great team. But the number of times where I've said yes, and then, and maybe it's a reminder. Maybe it's like the day before, like, hey, man, just confirming we're on this call tomorrow. It's like, yes, we are. And I look at my calendar and I go, well, I got to fucking cancel that because I told this guy to be on a call with him. All because that person followed up. If I had to impart a superpower on all trainers and coaches that would make them better tomorrow, it would just be following up. After your first session, hey, how you feeling? First one of the books can be rough, a little bit sore, anything like, you feeling good? Oh, either it doesn't matter if this person feels like dog shit and they're fucking injured, they will feel better because you followed up. Like I'm teaching this to grown ass adults. Like I'm in the business world consulting with companies and I go, hey, I put you in touch with so-and-so. That's the VP of this company. I sent him an email. Have you emailed them back yet? Look, it's my fucking connection. This is my person. You take care of them or you don't get access to my people again. I don't bring people in who are a fucking day late and a buck short. That's your reputation on the line. But more importantly, it's fucking my reputation on the line. Right. Following up is it is the number one notification in my calendar. It is the number one thing on my to-do list, on my notes on my phone and my computer. It's follow up, semicolon, dash, 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 dash. I could grab, where the fuck's my notebook's in the other room. I have notebook. I literally have one of my notebooks that I carry with me. And it's like, it's a fucking Mont Blanc notebook. It's about this big. It's about yay thick. The entire notebook is a literally date at the top. Every fucking thing and person and email and shit I need to follow up with that day. And then it's lines through it because I've done it. And then the next page is date, follow up, semicolon, dash, ton of shit. I have people I have to follow up with, phone calls, texts, emails, DMs, WhatsApp, fucking Telegram, send a carrier pigeon to this person, send a fucking edible arrangement to this asshole. It's this fucking prick's birthday. And then after that, it's X's through it again because I've done all of it. Dude, by right hand of fucking God, I have a notebook that's literally, and I have more, but one is like, I have in my backpack still because I just finished it. And it's cover to cover, handwritten, follow up. I sit on the plane and I go, what's in my head right now that I need to put on here that I need to hold myself accountable to? For the love of God, understand your appetite for risk. If you want to get in this game, understand your appetite for risk. I know you're not going to war, but trust me, a lot of people sit on that perch and they sit back and they contemplate making a decision without understanding the relationship to risk. It's like, you know why you can't make a decision? Because you don't understand where the decision lies in your schematic around risk. If you have a schematic built around risk, it's very easy. What side of the fence is this on? It's on this side? Okay, I don't do it. It's on this side? Okay, I do it. Done, right? Okay, do that. Understand your relationship with risk. Learn how to follow up. Learn how to work. Learn what it means to work. Learn what it means to practice. Learn what it means to provide a service, right? Learn what it means to have a bit of humility. Learn what it means to reach out. Learn what it means to communicate. Posting email, fucking sign, like it's a 6-figure month, like go fuck your hands. You're never going to make it. You're never going to make it. You're never, like, you're just not, it's just not, I'm sorry. Like, you and I have like almost half a century in this game, and I can tell you without a doubt, you're just not, it's not it. You're not there. You're not there. If you're thinking that way, go sell insurance.
Yeah.
Starbucks, barista, whatever. Like, fuck, it's just not there, man. It's just not there.
Yeah.
You and I do something when we're in a teaching setting together. And I'm sure you've noticed it. The way because you and I debrief after every single day in L3. We sit back at the house and we talk about the students. And obviously, like, you know, by the time they get to L3, the students are fucking out of control. Like, they're the world class. And it's funny because I'm just thinking of it now as we're going through. But without fail, every single time and this goes back to everything we've ever done in person together. Like, I'm talking back to NC Fit, CrossFit, wherever the fuck it. You know what I'm talking about? Remember that one?
Oh, yeah, I remember.
And we sit back and, you know, we did that for zero money. And we just taught fucking, I don't know, squatting and mobility, whatever the fuck we did. And I remember after the key for, you know, like when we talk about the students in a room, any room you and I have ever been in for almost 10 years. Yeah, it probably would be that at that point. How we pick out the good ones is who asked the good questions, not who knew all the answers. Yeah. It was like, yeah, that guy asked really good questions. That girl asked really good questions. Level 3 every day, dude. It's literally every day. And that's what it comes down to. Like, fuck, man. Oh, it's frustrating because I know the standard of the industry could be so much higher if the focus was in the right place.
Yeah. And that's what asking the right questions tells you about someone. It tells you where their focus is. It tells you what they're noticing about the situation and where they feel that they're lacking in understanding. And that's someone's awareness, is the questions that they ask. Like, if someone's asking where the refrigerator or the microwave is versus if someone's asking, you know, why we're putting the wedge in this position on someone's foot in this drill because they just had an ACL surgery, that's two different mindsets around training. So it's like the questions that you're asking, that gives awareness. It gives me a look. It gives me awareness into where your focus is and where your mind's at and where you want to improve and the level that you're thinking of these things at. And that's what I want to see. So yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, and look, I think it's about time that we stopped calling these things intangibles. I think the internet has diluted the human experience to the point where what we're talking about seems like, you either got it or you don't. It's like, no, dude, no.
It's a skill.
Like, it's a skill, 100%. Me as like a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old, I was a sit on the ledge type of person. I have a friend, my buddy Shane, one of my closest friends, which also I think is another weird thing that we have in common, that your
Shane
best friend is also
me right before this podcast.
That's so wild. We live such weird parallel lives. It's not. But and I don't know what temperamentally your Shane is like, but my
loose
Shane.
cannon.
Yeah, so I wouldn't go as far as loose cannon, but that's hilarious that you said that on a podcast that gets like non-trivial amounts of listeners. But like, he taught through example what it meant to just make decisions. Like, we would go on bike rides and he would see like a set of stairs, and like, he was an athletic dude, and he'd be like, I got it. I'm like, what? Dude, this is like a courthouse. That's like 25 steps. Dude, you're jumping off a 4-story building. And he's just like, I got it. And he just like would ride his bike. And like, we had bikes that were built for that type of shit. And like, but sure enough, like, that was like, you literally look at it and go, yeah, I can do that. Goes across the street, goes, tell me when there's no cars. I go, okay, no cars. Bombs it across the street. And the thing is, stuck the landing every time. Every time. The kid was fucking, and I was the guy who's like, you can do it? I'm like, absolutely not. Like, not even a little bit. And he would just fucking poke me and poke me and poke me. And it's like, one of the things I owe to him more than anything is like, by the time I hit 18 and 19, it was like, yeah, sure, move away from undergrad, move away for grad school. But it started there. Like,
yeah,
people don't ever, and I'm not saying you need to take a shrink, but take an inventory. Like, your personality gets kind of formed for you, and that's a whole nother podcast. But like, you know, there's so much of what we're talking about, people label as like the soft skills, and it's like, no, this is the hard science. Like, this is the stuff that matters. And so it's anyways, like, and not to say that the business and the systems and all of that doesn't matter, but these are evolutions. right? Like these are, if you don't know how to do 1+1, you can't do fractal equations, right? Like there's a process to this, and the process starts with you as a product, and like you need to understand that. You need to understand that product inside and out for you to constantly be able not just to sell it, but to evolve and iterate on it. Right? Like our business development has been a direct byproduct of your and I and Matt's personal development, without a doubt. Like you are, in some ways you're the exact same as when I met you, which is, we still laugh about the same dumb shit we laughed about 10 years ago. But you as an operator in the business is like, just not even recognizable, right? Like,
Yeah.
and you'd be the first to admit that, and I'd be the same. Like, but good. And it's as a direct byproduct of both of us just every single day showing up to the amount of risk that we can tolerate.
Yeah. And I think that's because of a lot of the skills or the mindset, at least that you mentioned throughout this podcast. Like, my risk tolerance could be described as numb. But that's that's been developed over a long period of time. But I remember, like, man, I remember the first time I went cliff diving. It was like I was standing up at the top of the cliff, and I'm like, yo, like, I'm scared as shit right now. And I'm like, you know what? You committed to this. You're not going to be a bitch and back out now. You're going to fucking do it. And I jumped off that cliff. And then the next time it wasn't so scary. And now, like, I don't know what scared is. But, but at the same time, like, that carried over into this business. Like, we've been through some shit in situations that we were way over our head. It's like, I don't fucking know how to do this, but I committed to doing it, so I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to fucking do it. And it's the ability to not just take risks, but put yourself in the position to follow through and be able to problem solve once you're in that position so you can follow through. And I think that's what a lot of the development along the way, that's where it has come from, is just committing to solving the problem and actually doing it.
Yeah. Other people might phrase that as learning.
Yeah, they're smarter than me, though.
Yeah. No, but I'm saying is like, that's what the real learning is.
Yeah.
Right? Like notice we like, and mind you, we sell educational courses that are aimed at making coaches better, but there's only so much we can do when we teach you these principles. Like, and luckily I think we exclude with the podcast people who don't want to hear, they want to hear just the the 6-figure mastermind, 10-figure month bullshit, like dumb shit. Yeah. But like, I think it's worth reiterating the stuff we didn't talk about. And like, this is not just this is more than just two guys telling a story about how they ran their business, right? Like, this is something that as we start to interact with other business owners at much larger scales, this is the sauce, man. Like, this is the shit we're talking about. This is the story you're going to hear time and again from people who have a story worth telling, right? Like, and it's not this, it's not this salesy fucking everything's fucking rainbows and sunshine. Like, there's a reason that this is drawn out. There's a reason it sounds almost cliched, because that's just the way it is. And, I think to a certain degree, I don't know how much, like the principles stayed the same. I think the principles we followed stayed the same, but it's knowing how to apply those principles to today's day and age. And I think that's where, when most people are learning the business side now, they're not learning principles, right? They're not learning the reproducible, tried and true, this is going to work 10 years from now, this is going to work, because then if you have those principles, if you have those values, when you run into the inevitable, like, well, what do we do about content? What do we do about emails? What do we do about landing pages? What do we do about graphics? There's no sitting on the perch, right? There's a decision, and the decision is driven by that muscle that you've trained to act on behalf of your values and the principles, and then it becomes easy. Right? Watching people get tripped over that is like, oh, you have a foundation in business that's built up on a house of cards, right? Because you're not principled in your approach. And like, the principles are something that are meant to be like a tie break and a decision, right? Values are meant to be like you run into a situation and you're like, let me confer with the oracles that I keep in my brain. And you look back to the things that you value, the things that are you've instilled as principles, and you go, all right, what's the jury say? All in favor for doing that. All right, I guess that's what we're doing. And then you just fucking go. And like, I think the worst thing you could do, I'm going to put it this way. The only mistake you can make in business is making a decision that's not in line with your principles and values. It's the only mistake you can make. Because you might get to a place where you're like, fuck, we did this, and like, you know, maybe the market should have done that. But you shouldn't have done that. Because then your business isn't yours anymore. That's the whole point of getting to do this. That's what happens when you're the boss, is you get to decide. And then you also get to be responsible and take responsibility for it, but you also get, you know, a bit of the credit when things go your way. And I think people just, they it's so quick to brush aside that stuff that we're talking about, and then watch those people squirm when they run into, you know, and it'll be fucking hard. And if they don't have those systems and principles in place and those values in place, then that's going to trip you up. But, you know, so again, that's what I want people to kind of sit with, rather than like, oh, fitness business podcast, yay, 10-figure scaling system, mastermind to the moon launch. Like, how it's just not going to work.
No. So in summary, I don't know what the fuck we were going to tell you. I don't know what the fuck we told you. And I don't know what the fuck you heard.
It was the greatest essay of all time.
Yeah.
All right. We'll wrap it for this week. If you guys have been listening the last couple of weeks, you know there's some changes coming through the pipe. In October, the Sunday episode of RX Radio is going to be over at Paint the Edges. So on Spotify, Apple iTunes, Paint the Edges podcast with James McIntosh and James Thayer. On Monday episode, new show coming, Strength in Context. Jorge De Hoyos. De Hoyos it gets me. You want to say De Hoyos with an A. Jorge De Hoyos and Brandon Schultz. That's going to be the Monday episode. So head on over to those channels. Again, that's Paint the Edges and Strength in Context. Make sure you subscribe. And if you're not subscribed to this one, obviously hit subscribe. Appreciate you guys hanging out, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, guys.